no, my thought is that a lot of the criticisms of MAGA is essentially people saying that we're like backsliding, or that we're kind of the way that we used to do things, that like in the past 100 or so years that we've gone away from, that MAGA is kind of reintroducing that. And my whole thesis is that the cancer in question, in my opinion, would be things like egalitarianism and things like feminism and stuff like that, because
Why do you think
that is the new.
egalitarianism is cancerous?
Well, yeah, because that's a new idea that is disrupting the way that we normally do things. So yes.
Why do you think egalitarianism is? Do you believe in like the Great Replacement theory?
I have
That's
to
a
more.
yes. Okay.
Well, no, the idea that
Interesting.
there's some cabal of like Jews or something trying to like replace our society, like I don't know, I'm not gonna. No, it's more
Okay. Do
nuanced
you
than
think
that. But
America would be better off if it was a racially and culturally homogenous country?
yeah, I think every country would be better off like that.
Okay. So by being against egalitarianism, you just wish that America was like a white ethno state or what?
No, so egalitarianism means that essentially the goal of society is for everyone to be equal, right? And my whole point is that like throughout the entirety of human history, human existence, that hasn't been how we do things, and that hasn't led to cohesive societies. So the idea that we're now as a society going to make that an axiom to drive towards, that's not normal, and that doesn't lead to good outcomes. And like you can look at societies throughout time that have tried to advance egalitarianism, it doesn't work. And so if we're talking
What
about what the social cancer would be, it's again it's the thing that isn't
could you name an
supported by
example
an example of what.
of a society that tried to achieve equality, but it actually just destroyed the country?
Yeah, the Soviet Union.
Jesus fucking Christ.
What are you laughing at? What's wrong about that?
I mean, the idea that it was ruled over by an absolutely despotic, maniac dictator who, I mean, he had all these harebrained ideas, but I really just think he was using the guise of the sort of whatever you want to call it, like the Marxist, what the hell's the word? The what the fuck is wrong with me? Propaganda to push like this is what we are striving for, but like, what efforts did they make to reach equality?
Well, the whole point of Marxism and the whole point of the Russian Revolution was essentially to do away with social hierarchies, right? And that's like the first thing that the Soviets did once they got into power was like take people who owned land and take people who owned like property and stuff like that and like throw them out of helicopters over Siberia, right? Because the idea was that if you have power over other people, right? If you have more, social power than other people, that's not okay, and we should do away with that. And that was again, you can go into the
There's different
specifics
ways
of.
to reach equality. Uh, Throwing rich people out of helicopters. I guess if you chop off the 1%, then you sort of make things a little bit more equal. But the kind of egalitarianism that I would be interested in is lifting up the bottom.
Yeah, I'm not, and like I don't. I think very few people, myself included, would be opposed to just what you just said, just making people who are at the bottom making their lives better. I don't think that's a contentious point. What the contentious point is the idea that people in society having power over other people in society is inherently a bad thing. Which that's I mean that's the root of Marxism, but that's honestly that's the root of leftist politics in general, right? Is the idea that social hierarchies are bad and we have to do away with them. And my whole point is that that's not normal. That doesn't work, and historically, there's no basis for that being successful in any way. And that's kind
Um,
of what I see leftism and like the Democratic Party in the U.S. as doing is essentially that, and that would be my main issue
okay, so
with leftism as a
when
type
was
of
the
thing.
United States socially or whatever at its best?
When is the U.S. socially at its best?
Like whatever you think the problems, like I just said socially, but so because you seem to be against the push that people with a leftist political agenda are trying to achieve. So at what point in America's history did we have optimal, I don't know, social relationships, just the right sized government that had just the right amount of control or whatever.
I mean, I'm not opposed to. I guess given the question you're asking, I guess I would say like between like 1780 and like 1810 or something like that. Because like I said, I mean
When
that
we
was
when
the
we had slavery,
yeah, that was one aspect of it. Yeah.
so you're pro slavery,
No.
but they had slavery. And then what those fucking leftists did was they said, hey, it's not okay for one group to subjugate another group like that, so let's get rid of slavery. So wouldn't abolishing slavery fit your, they're just trying to get rid of these natural hierarchies thing? I don't understand how your logic allows you to criticize slavery.
No, it does because I mean, among other things, slavery didn't work from a logistical standpoint. And this is, I mean, this is something that isn't taught in schools for some
It worked
reason. But if you look at
incredibly well.
no, it didn't. And if you look up the free soiler movement, it was essentially the idea, and this actually comes from Marx among other people, that people will perform better and people will have more output per, hour of labor they have or whatever. There was like economists before the Civil War figured out that the most efficient way to get people to do things is to pay them. It's not to just hold them at gunpoint and make them do your work for you. And that's why, like after the Civil War, like the U.S.
Did
I mean, I think
did slave
immediately
owners
after
accumulate massive amounts of wealth?
not as much as they would have if they actually like employed people and actually had them working for their own benefit.
Sure, that's an argument, and that very well might be true, but did they still do it?
Yeah, of course they did.
Okay, so
I'm saying that the way that people do things, like the way that people do things in the economy now, is different than how they did them 200 years ago. And part of that is because
yeah,
of laws.
it's
Part of
better.
it's better, but it's also more efficient, which is like most of the people who were
Okay,
against
so
slavery. Wait, hold on.
The
Most
economics
people,
of today are
go ahead.
better than they were in the period you think we were socially at our healthiest. So I'm really confused. So the economics and the slavery, which is the economic and the social piece, was no good. But this is your golden age. So what was golden about it?
Well, you didn't ask about the economy. You asked about like society, right?
Yeah, and we had a society with slavery, and you're not a fan of slavery. So why is this? So okay, forget the economic piece for now. Why was this the golden age?
I mean, among other things, government was much more, I guess you could say much more flexible. There was much more connection between like people and communities and the federal government when compared to now, right?
I mean, I think that's just because the societies were vastly less complex.
Yeah, I mean that's what you asked is
So
what point was
you're against the Constitution?
No, when did I say that?
When you said that the golden age was before the Constitution.
I mean, I might have just so the Constitution. I was like 1787, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, to be honest
Do,
with you, bro, the Constitution isn't really. I'm not really that attached to it either way. Like, I don't not like the Constitution, but I also don't. I'm not a fan of it either. Like, it's kind
do you
of
think the Articles of Confederation were better?
probably not. That's probably why we got rid of them, right?
So what's golden about this era that you pointed to?
You just acknowledged it yourself. Is that the society was more?
It was
No,
less complex.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Which
what I'm talking about.
Which
Yeah.
has certain benefits and certain drawbacks as well. I was just explaining like one aspect of why it had. I wasn't even agreeing with you necessarily. I was just explaining this one aspect of it. So what we like shit, what was it? I don't remember the exact percentages, but a huge number of people were farmers, right? And
Sure.
we only had 13 colonies at the time, so we weren't super spread out. The more you spread out, the more complex a system you have to be able to manage it. And you have to have a more powerful government that can do things like levy taxes so that the country can actually hold itself together. I just read a book about Jefferson and Hamilton, and a huge part of the debate was, can we actually create a country that's strong enough to hold itself together? Because what a lot of them, like Jefferson a little bit, but Hamilton and George Washington, they basically believed people aren't capable of governing themselves because they're not capable of doing what actually needs to be done to preserve, the health of the country. Like, for example, the federal government, it just had to basically rely on donations from the states for income. But the country was in a massive amount of debt from the Revolutionary War, and they were in danger of the country just failing. So they had to throw out the Articles of Confederation for, a stronger government through the Constitution. But anyways, in addition to autographed copies of both my books and, of course, Spanky, I'm excited to announce that I now have stickers, tumblers, apparel, and more on my store. Take Spanky, the God-defeating penguin, and can you put that into a logical syllogism, with you wherever you go now. What was golden about this age then, again?
So I think the other thing that I didn't get to, and this goes along with the government not being as complex as it is now, is that there was a much more, I guess you could say, narrow idea in the time period that I'm talking about of what it means to be an American and what kind of Americanism is as a concept. That meant much more in the early days of America than it does now. And I think you can point to a lot of the issues we're having right now. I mean, I think immigration is probably the best one, but that we, as Americans in 2025, we largely don't know what it means to be an American, and we don't know what values being an American entails. And
I would say the values laid out in the Declaration and the Constitution.
Has it always been like that?
Well, that's just kind of, when somebody does a citizenship test, that's what they have to be proficient in. So what is being American other than that? And why is it that certain types are able to be Americanized, but those types aren't necessarily capable of that?
Well, the culture of the you can't write an exhaustive list of what it means to be an American. It's how we live here.
According to the United States government, for the citizenship test, they kind of know how to do that. And the immigrants actually do better on it than kids that grow up in America their whole lives and are educated at American schools. So this is odd. What does it mean to be an American to you?
I mean, it means, I can give you some basic ideas, but it means you resemble an American to other Americans, right? You speak English.
So they look like that?
When did I say they look like that?
They resemble what an American is?
Yeah, you resemble them as far as how you act, how you present yourself. It can go with how you look too. I mean, that's part of it.
What does an American look like and act like?
Like how we look like and act like right now.
Who's we?
Me and you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, sure. I mean, here's the thing, dude, is that you
like I live in.
Wait, hold on. This goes back
ahead.
to what I was. Yeah, this goes back to what I was saying about the 1780s to 1810s, is that Americans, for better or worse, had a pretty good understanding of what it means to be an American. And like you can use all these like adjectives of like, the problems you have with that, but like at the end of the day, like that's kind of important when you have a society and you have a country, right? Is to have an identity and to do things based on that identity. Like that's the whole point of having a political entity in the first place.
Right. I think that identity and the values of what it is to be American are in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Anybody in the world is capable of believing those things.
But wouldn't you agree with me that you're better suited to American society having lived here your whole life, right? And having absorbed the culture here as opposed to like reading it on like a study guide for a citizenship test or something?
I don't know. America is as culturally diverse, even if we completely shut off immigration for the next 100 years or whatever. The culture in Mississippi versus the culture in the Bay Area versus the culture in the oil fields in North Dakota versus the culture in Maine is radically different. Don't you think?
No, compared to and I've traveled quite a
What?
bit. Compared to other countries, like compared to the countries that like we're getting immigration from now. No, the oil fields in North Dakota and like hipsters drinking coffee in the Bay Area, like they're way more similar to each other than either of those people are to like a Haitian, for example, right?
Sure. Why is that?
Because they both were brought up in the same society. That's why.
Right. So why can't immigrants um why can't I remember what any words are today? Why can't immigrants assimilate into that?
You can make an argument that they can, but my whole point is that we don't like there isn't really a reason to entertain that like just by itself, right?
What?
Like given the choice between having a bunch of immigration or investing in the American people to do the things that we expect immigrants to do, like it wouldn't common sense have it that you'd want to invest in the people who already live here?
I don't
You know what I'm
know
saying?
what that could possibly mean unless you're saying, why are we paying people to move here rather than supporting the homeless? But we don't do that. So I don't know. Or if you're talking about immigrants being on welfare, well, if they come to America, they're Americans. So we are spending money on Americans.
Well, I'll give you an example. So, for example, and I've talked to a bunch of people who work in agriculture, and by and large, and this goes back actually to what I was saying about slavery, that by and large, farms that employ a bunch of like non undocumented people, right? They have less productivity per person compared to farms that don't. And the reason is that farms that don't, they tend to invest more in technology. They tend to invest more in making things more productive,
Mm-hmm.
which in what's the word I'm looking for? As a result, the farmers that don't employ undocumented people and then instead, employ people who are from here, they tend to do better. But the thing is that we, in a lot of, for a lot of people, we've essentially just, you know, quasi solved the problem by having a bunch of immigration to fill these holes in our workforce, as opposed to adapting our workforce to meet the realities of what's happening in America right now. Because, like, regardless of if it was in the 1820s or if it's now, relying on people essentially as slaves, right, to do your work for you isn't it's not moral, but besides it not being moral, it just doesn't it's not logistically sound. Like it doesn't work.
I don't know what you mean by it doesn't work. It sounds like you're really just saying that migrant farmers or whatever, they're not like migrant workers because like the UAE has migrant workers and they're like not like the point is not for them to live there permanently. That's a little bit different than what we do here, but um, is that they don't make as much money than farms that you know that use people that have social security cards or whatever. And it's like, okay, but if you compare the labor, I don't think they're really all that comparable. I grew up in the Midwest, and the kind of farming that's done there is almost entirely mechanized, right? A
Yeah.
combine can harvest because it's just grains that are grown there, right? I now live in the Central Valley of California, and there's a lot of automation that goes on. Like they have shakers to shake the apples off the trees and stuff like that. But, the mandarins and the walnuts and a lot of that stuff, you just have to have a human being do that kind of work. And who is willing to do that work is oftentimes people that are coming here to try to build a good world or like a better world for, themselves and their families. And then hopefully, the no, like I used to be a teacher. Like I've worked with literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these families. And the idea is, they're kind of investing in their own future. None of them want their kids, to do that kind of work. They build a little bit of wealth and they get established so that they can go off and do other things.
Okay. I mean, that's not incorrect. That doesn't really address the point that I made though. That essentially relying on unskilled or excuse me, relying on undocumented people to do these kinds of jobs, that's
The
less
jobs would just
go
go
ahead.
the jobs would just go away. You're just simply not going, or they would be scaled down dramatically, which would just mean there wouldn't be as many billionaires. I mean, if the Resnick family, I don't know if you know who they are, but if the Resnick family loses half their fortune because now they have to employ people that they can't pay under the table or whatever, then I'm like, okay, I'm not shedding any tears for billionaires, and there won't be as many pistachios on the shelves, and it'll become more of a luxury food than just although pistachios are fucking expensive anyways. Yeah, I mean, I won't cry for billionaires either, but I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. Well, and I mean the whole point of especially agriculture, because I mean I think I don't have to tell you this, but agriculture is massively subsidized in the U.S. as it is, right? Like there's all sorts of agricultural
yeah,
stuff
I'm
that
aware
by
of that.
themselves do
Grain
not make money.
subsidies, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no reason that we can't do that for like pistachio farming, right? Like there's no reason that we can't have basic incentives for Americans to do those jobs, such that number one, they're doing a better job for the reason I already said about the slavery and the free soiler thing. They'd be doing a better job, and number two, we wouldn't have this weird like kind of almost like caste system, right? Where like we have people who are like from a different
It's not a
culture who
caste
aren't really.
system because
That's
the
kind of
United
what it
States
is, though,
has
right?
social
Like
mobility or economic mobility.
if you're an undocumented immigrant working somewhere where you can't really appeal if you're being like abused or something, you don't really have any representation as far as the government goes. You're essentially in a different caste than like everyone else, right?
Yeah, but people die, and they have children that are fully American citizens. So it's not a problem that goes on forever.
Yeah, and this just goes back to I guess my whole point that I mean, given I don't really see why having essentially just like not unlimited immigration, but having immigration without any sort of end in sight, I don't see how that's preferable to solving the problem domestically, because
I
domestic
mean,
problems are much more easier to solve.
I don't really want to get into an economic debate because I'm not equipped for it, but number have to go up, right? And we're not sustaining our population without immigration. So number don't go up unless
Well, yeah, and
unless
that's I get
immigration.
part of that is because, like I just said, we've been relying on undocumented immigration for so long that we kind of aren't really feeling the sting of not having as big of a fertility rate. But number two, I mean,
Countries that
we
don't have a lot of immigration are just naturally like South Korea and Japan.
yeah
Japan is they fucking hate immigrants, and
yeah
they're so the sting is not enticing Japanese women to spread their legs. It's just not happening. I'm not, this isn't like, it's not going to be productive with me if we talk about this. I want to go back to what was golden about the 1780s.
I already remember what I said about American identity and having an idea of what's right and what's wrong as a country. That's what I'm getting at.
Right. But they practiced slavery. There's just so much overt racism in the 1780s. So I don't know what makes you think that the average American in the 1780s was a more decent person than an American today is. That
I wouldn't
seems a
say
little
it's
bit silly.
I wouldn't say it's they're necessarily a more decent person. I would say that they're more what's the word I'm looking for? They were more aligned with the I guess the American nation than because right now living in America
But it was
there's no
what,
expectation there's no expectation that
what
you're
does that
part of
mean?
it means you're culturally an American. It means you're part of the civilization that we're building here. That's what being an American means.
Have you heard of Shays Rebellion and the Whiskey Rebellion?
I've heard of the Whiskey Rebellion, yeah.
Shays Rebellion. It was another. What the fuck was that one? I don't think it was farmers, but I want to say maybe that one had to do with people weren't getting paid for their service in the Revolutionary War, and there's a few other things happen. I don't remember, but they basically they tried the American people took up arms against their own government, right? So like this idea that we were more socially cohesive back then is like, I mean, no, the idea what it means to be an American. We were going through tremendous growing pains at the time. I kind of already talked about it. It was just like, well, we have to form a stronger government. Some people thought Jefferson didn't really want to do that. He wanted the country to just be a bunch of farmers, and he wanted the government to stay pretty limited. Hamilton was very Trumpian. It's actually very interesting.
Yeah,
But
I'm a Hamiltonian for sure. I know about Hamilton. I would definitely
right.
honestly I would go as far like yeah, I think Hamilton was if Hamilton had more sway than he did in the early days of America, I'd think this would be a much better country.
He had
I
a
guess
huge
that's
amount of sway. I mean, he's the reason we had a centralized bank.
yeah.
That was his idea.
Well, and if you look at the history of this country, the federal government over time has gotten significantly, significantly stronger, and like that's essentially just because having a big country, you kind of need to have a big central force holding it together.
Yeah.
And Hamilton saw that, and that's why, like this whole idea of America just kind of as a collection of states, like a lot of founding fathers saw that. Hamilton didn't see it like that, and I mean that's ultimately why the Civil War happened, right? Was because states thought states had such a radical degree of discrepancy between them that they essentially just couldn't operate, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about in the 1780s, we knew more what it meant to be an American. I so disagree with that because who was even granted representation was extremely limited. It was at first just the property owning white men. It actually pretty quickly got changed to, I don't remember what year, but they pretty quickly changed it to like all free white men, right? But that's your only representation. So you have, and at the time they were, the vast majority of people in the country. But the idea that what it means to be an American is what only 40% of the population gets a say in, I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, it was probably less than 40%. I mean, the point is that and this goes back to what I was saying about egalitarianism before, is that it's not healthy in a society for everyone to be, essentially for everyone to have an equal say in how things work, right? Like the idea of...
So you're against like pure democracy?
Are you not against pure democracy?
I know that, I wish I could remember, but I've seen some good content that just shows that like democracy just like like mathematically they can prove there are ways in which it doesn't work. I mean, I don't think babies and kindergartners should be able to vote. So does that mean that I'm against pure democracy? I mean, I guess. I think a representative democracy can work just fine. But when did we go too far with our emancipation? Or not emancipation, with our suffrage?
That's a pretty good question. To be honest with you, I think the system of having like land owning white males being the people who can, that's better than what we have now. Like, I mean, I guess
Why?
like if I had to like, because most people don't know what's going on in this country, and that's fine because most people have their own lives that have nothing to do with the government.
Remember all that stuff you were saying about?
So I would, yeah, go ahead.
Remember all that stuff you were saying about those poor immigrant workers working for slave wages?
Yeah.
Let's say we just don't have immigrant labor, so it's Americans that are working on these farms. It's not going to be a good paying job. The farmers are the landowners. You would imagine that the vast majority of these people working on it are probably, they're wage workers and they probably rent and whatever else. Why on earth would that group of people think that the system of only the guy I work for can vote and I can't? Why would they think that system works? And what would be your case? Like, how would you sell them that is working? That just sounds like, I mean, I hate to sound like such a Marxist, but it really sounds like the power dynamic there is quite unjust.
Well, yeah, again, the idea that the normal, like, hoi polloi average person, the idea that the average person somehow has, like, a right to, like, participate in government, or like, that's just not, that's something
then
that
they shouldn't
we made
be taxed.
Up, like, they shouldn't, no, because you're part of the country, of course you should be
But they
taxed.
don't have representation.
So?
Finish the sentence. No taxation without...
Well, that was at a country. The no taxation without representation thing. That was the Americans as an entity telling the British, "You're taxing us too much." That wasn't like the individual, like, working class of America telling the other class, that wasn't what was going on. That was
So
the Revolutionary War was a country versus country thing. That wasn't like individual like socioeconomic classes like revolting against each other or something.
I mean, the British Empire was our top down governing entity, and the American people were subject to its taxation and
Yeah.
its laws and whatever. Okay, replace the British Empire with the federal government and expand Americans to those that don't have representation. Why would they think that this is a good system?
Why would the farmers think it's a good system that they can't vote? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily expect the again, like the people who can't vote, I wouldn't necessarily expect them to like be super enthusiastic about the fact that they can't vote. It's just that like I said, like I wouldn't if my toilet's broken, right, and I call a plumber, it wouldn't make sense for me to give the plumber all these like instructions on how to do his job because I'm not a plumber and I don't know what he's doing. It's the same thing with voting, that if there's someone who has absolutely no idea, which like most Americans fall into this category, right? If you don't know what's happening in government, you don't know how things work, you don't know what makes a good decision, it benefits absolutely no one to have that person voting because they don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? And that's how we understood the democratic process in the beginning of this country. It was that if you are a land owning, like if you were a land owning white man, right? The idea was that you at least had more of an idea of what was going on in the country compared to like the average
Yeah,
person,
but why
which
would
was the
they
whole
know
point,
that?
right? Because they're more invested in it.
Why would that mean that they know more about what's going on?
I mean, doesn't that just kind of intuitively follow, right? If I'm a business owner,
Not
there's
really.
a better chance. If I'm a business owner, right, there's a
Hmm.
better chance that I'm going to know more about what's happening with the economy compared to like just like a warehouse worker who just like
That's one aspect of it.
yeah. Well, that was essentially the idea that was behind that, right?
Okay, but we now live in a country like if we want to talk about again, we've created a complex society. So it's not just the economy; it's also how do we deal with the like health and well-being of people that live here? What do we do about national defense, for example? Um, what what does a business owner or a landowner or whatever um, know jack shit about any of that stuff? What I would say is I would say the justification for expanding uh, voting rights to so many people, I think that it does have to coincide with a national educational agenda. And so, because we have compulsory education in the United States, I think that your average decent high school student understands the world more than a landowner in the 1780s did.
Really?
Yeah, the landowner in the 1780s would maybe be more politically connected with their system, but their system was also just much more simple. You could only wield so much power. And I mean, why on earth would I trust? I mean, this is sort of like a an argument that we should be that the 1% should make our political decisions for us, or at least select our which they kind of already do in a
Yeah, I was
way.
just about to say they
But
kind of already do, bro. What are you talking
yeah,
about?
are you against Citizens United?
uh, excuse my stupidity, but I'm not super.
Unlimited campaign contributions, money is free speech.
I'm indifferent. As a principle, I generally speaking would probably be opposed to that, but I'm not.
Okay.
That's not really something I'm super interested in. So
Okay, I what would be I mean, I could try to pick on a specific example, but if
well,
only 1% of the population chooses representation, I don't understand what makes you think that that would in any way be beneficent to everybody else. I just don't
well, yeah,
think it
it's
would be at all.
the reason for that is the reason why currently, right? Instead of, I mean, you just alluded to it, right? That right now I mean, in some Western states, you'll have what's the word for it? Like referendums and stuff, where like there's a popular vote on stuff. But like, no, generally speaking, as a country, we have like a small, like I mean, we have like a small educated, I guess you can call them an elite, like a small educated group that makes decisions on behalf of the people. And the reason for that is because the founders knew, and like I mean, just basic survey of history will also tell you this, that like if you just let the common people make all of the decisions, they're going to make very bad decisions because they just don't know what they're doing. Which is,
Well,
again, I
actually,
wouldn't
if you
expect
do
them
the
to know what they're
research,
doing.
the large crowds, actually, if you heard of the concept of the wisdom of crowds,
Yeah, wisdom of the masses. Yeah,
right? So actually, when you get a sufficiently large number of people, they're actually very capable. Individually, you're going to get people that are all over the place and will do things like, we need to ban the FDA because I want leaded mercury in my milk. And it's like, well, okay, there's that guy and his vote counts too, but 99% of all the other votes said don't do stuff like that. So I actually do believe in the wisdom of crowds, but it has to coincide, I think, with, like I said, the nation has to take education seriously.
yeah, I disagree. I mean, again, you can look at history, you can look at literally every like every society that has ever tried direct democracy, it didn't work. Like that's why Athens fell. That's why like China in like the 50s and the 60s didn't do very well. That's why
That is
the
not why China didn't do well in the
sure it is,
50s.
sure it is, sure it is. Most
No,
people were
it's
super.
not. They had
No, it is.
they had top-down autocratic rule, and he told the farmers, "Hey, take 10% of your land and grow this one specific type of tree." And it caused a famine that killed like 30 million people because they mismanaged their land.
Well, wait, hold on. You realize that the only reason that the Chinese government was able to do that was because they were popularly supported, right? Like
Did they
if
have elections?
not for like supreme leaders, no.
Okay, well,
That
look,
doesn't
let's
mean
get all the
that doesn't mean
1% and
that
have
doesn't
them
mean that the
have them
population.
put in an autocrat in control of the United States, and let's have, what do you call that? That the view that the current Supreme Court kind of has, the executive something, basically give him plenary powers, and then he'll force everybody to make widgets for him to line his gold plated palace with, and that'll be the good thing. And it's like, no, that won't be the good thing.
I mean, if you want to look at what happened in Rwanda, that's a better example. That wasn't the Rwandan genocide. That wasn't like one person in charge telling all the Hutus to murder all the Tutsis. That was like an organic, like social thing where most of the people either supported or were indifferent to just killing a bunch of people.
Yeah,
And
you
like
can
there wasn't
brainwash. Ordinary people can be brainwashed to believe horrible things.
no, but it wasn't even brainwashing. It was the Rwandan
Yes,
genocide
it
was
was. They had
the wisdom
there
of
was
the
this
masses
campaign
in Rwanda in 1994. That's what that was.
They literally they took their like telecommunication system was just radio back then, but they were constantly feeding people this Nazi style propaganda about the other people being, I think they specifically called them rats. I want to say that was mostly what they referred to them as, but no, there was absolutely a top down propaganda dehumanization campaign. Oh, cockroaches? Yeah, maybe it was cockroaches.
I mean, there was, but that doesn't negate what I just said. That like at the end of the day, the choice for Rwanda to do what Rwanda did, that was like the people collectively doing that. That wasn't like there wasn't an outside force forcing them to do that. If I mean, if you're saying that like
Yeah, but it wasn't like mob to compare mob mentality and the way propaganda can work its way into a population to pure democracy or whatever, I think that's just really ridiculous. So I want to go like, do you think we'd be better off if women didn't vote?
absolutely,
Why?
for the reasons I just said, it's just by and large
Because women commit genocides? Women are easier
No,
to
no.
coerce into committing genocides? Pretty
No,
sure it's men that do that.
No, I misspoke. You're not understanding me. The thing is, and this goes back to what I was saying, that it's in an ordered society, people have an idea of like the place that they have in society and what they're doing towards that end.
So what is
Well,
women's
hold on,
place
hold on,
in society?
Yeah, women's place in society is raising children. That's what women do in society. Yes.
And men shouldn't do that?
That's not. I mean, no, men obviously.
What should
take care of
fathers do?
I mean, ideally, what should happen is mothers should raise children insofar as they're the ones spending time with children, socializing the children, etc. and fathers like facilitate that, right, by giving them resources, giving them money, giving them a house to live in, right? That's what like
You know
humans
that
do,
research
like, right?
shows that children that grow up with uninvolved fathers don't make it so well, don't have such good outcomes.
I didn't say uninvolved. It's
Yes, you
that like
did. No, you didn't say those words, but that's what you're describing.
so saying that like the mothers will spend like the day with the children and then the fathers will work during the day and then come home at night, is that, would you consider that uninvolved fathers?
Well,
Because
that's
that's
really
what I'm
not what you
suggesting.
laid out. You're
That's exactly
you're
what I laid
giving
out.
me this image, this very 1950s image of dad comes home from his long day at the factory and he's
Yeah.
the breadwinner. So he sits in his lazy chair and he sits there with a beer. And when Junior comes along and says something, he says, "Not now, son. I worked a long day and the game is on." You know, but
I didn't. I
why
don't support.
why is it that fathers can do that and it's good for the kid, but if mothers do that, it's not good for the kid?
I never supported fathers being like indifferent to their children.
But
Like
let's
that,
just
what
say
you just said
splitting
isn't
their
good.
let's just
Like,
say splitting their time.
what do you mean? What?
The fathers are splitting their time between work and their kid, and apparently that makes it okay for the kid. Why can't mothers also do that?
I mean, I would be theoretically, if there was a situation where either the mother stayed home and the dad worked, or the mother worked and the dad stayed home, I'd be open to that. That's not unreasonable in my opinion. The whole, I think, kind of the contention that we have is that having a system where instead of one parent staying home and the other parent working, both parents work. That doesn't work for anyone. And like either of the two
Why
situations that
so
is laid out, that would be preferable because having essentially having a kid being raised by whatever the fuck's there instead of their parents for 8 hours a day, right? That doesn't work. Like that doesn't lead to good outcomes.
Right. So what we
You know what I
could
mean? Like,
do, yes. So what we could do is we could have a system where, well, the children get an education, so they're socialized and under the care of licensed professional adults during the same hours that both parents are at work, and then they come home at the same time. What if we had a system like that?
I mean, theoretically, if it was as simple as that, that doesn't sound terrible, no.
Well, we kind of
The
have
thing
that
is that I
system.
still,
Now, I don't think we go far enough. I'm totally in favor of years of paid at home stay or whatever with your children, and that could take the form of who knows what. I mean, if we just had like UBI or something like that, then certain people, and maybe it would be on average more so the women than the men, would choose to maybe not work at all in those first 5, 6, 7 years or whatever. 6, 7. Or whatever. Now, some weird people would think that, oh, the society is inherently discriminatory because that's what's happening. It's like, no, people are making choices. So, but yeah, you can just, like, we literally have a system that can do, that can take care of what you think these children would be deprived of or whatever.
yeah, I mean, I think the system that we have right now isn't what you just described. That I think I wouldn't say most, but I mean, no, there's a huge crisis of even outside of school, right? Of children like not having a parent at home, and like and like that's why like people send their kids to like daycare and shit like that, right?
Yeah,
That
I was really lucky.
yeah,
My dad's parents lived right next to us, right across the lake from us on, well, it was a slough, but
yeah.
and so they raised me when I was really young, and I think that was, you know, it was good for my parents because it was free, and it was good for us because they were good people.
Yeah,
But
well,
anyways,
just to bring it back to
how
what I
did
was
we
saying,
get
like,
to this from women shouldn't be able to vote? So women, you don't think women should be able to vote because women shouldn't be working because they should be at home, but the kids are at school. So what's mom going to do all day anyway? She's just going to get wine drunk and watch reruns of, you know, The Golden Bachelor on Hulu. So that's no good. We got to get these women in the factories, right? So, but if they're
no.
working,
So
then
and
they should be able to vote.
No, so in an ordered society, women don't just have like one or two kids. Like childbearing is like what women do in the society. That's how we're supposed to work as people. That's how we're biologically wired as human beings. So the
How
idea that we're gonna have like a society where like women like, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is that like, women might have like one or two kids and then spend, 4 or 5 years at home until they go to school, and then they go like build shit in a factory. It's like that's not natural, and people don't like doing that, and that's why like for the vast expanse of human history up until like 100 so some years
there's
ago,
nothing
we
natural.
didn't do that,
There was
right?
nothing natural about the Industrial Revolution. That wasn't natural. What's natural is a 50% child mortality rate, not wearing shoes. I don't understand why we draw the line in the late 18th century, but today we got just so far away from our values. I mean, we naturally progressed through to the scientific revolution, then the industrial revolution, then whatever we happened. Like we naturally got here. So I don't really understand that point very well, but
The
so
point is that
I don't
by and
think you can make
large,
in order to make this argument work for you, we'd have to live like the Amish or something like that. You just would have to cast off modernity entirely, because modernity is just naturally, whatever people believe in, is just going to naturally make it so that people have fewer children. So then it's like, okay, do we Handmaid's Tale this shit and just have like force women to turn into breeders or something? Or what do we do? Or do we just cast off modernity and force people to have a lot of children because everybody's a subsistence farmer and so many kids die of diseases?
there's good things about modernity and there's bad things about modernity. Like the idea that if we go back to a system where women
But
don't really participate in the political
what
process, and
what
they
do you
don't
think
vote,
would
that doesn't
actually
mean
fix
that
the
doesn't
birth rate
mean
problem?
banning abortion is the number one thing.
Okay.
Am I wrong? We kill over 1 million children in the U.S. every year for no fucking reason. How
Well,
would
I don't
banning
know what
abortion?
that would, but
Like,
for no reason. Yeah. So nobody gets to tell you what you do with your body, but it doesn't work the other way around apparently. So there's no
no,
reason. No
if
reason.
yeah, I mean, no good reason. Like, there's a reason for it, but
Right.
99,
Bodily autonomy
99
is not good if they're a woman. I get it. So I don't know what that would even turn the birth rate into. I don't think it's going to get us up to 2.2 without immigration. So, but we'll put that one on the table. What else are you going to do?
have more incentives for parents to have more kids, have
That's
more time
never
off. As far as
worked.
having more time off for mothers after they give birth doesn't work.
No, none of the countries that have tried to implement what they try to do is they do massive discounts on buying your first home. They do the will pay you to stay at home for like the first 5 years or something like that. They do a kind of
Yeah.
welfare system with that kind of thing. I want to say it was Croatia. I'm not totally sure, but they in just the last few years, they tried all kinds of things. I think the mortgage thing was one of them. Like they'll give you a shitload of money toward buying your first home if you like have a couple of children or whatever. It doesn't work anywhere.
Yeah. So, and this goes back to this is more of I would say more of a cultural issue than a political issue necessarily. That at least for the entirety of my life, and probably people who are older than me too, um, in society, right? The idea of having a family or like having children, this isn't seen as something that you're required to do. This is seen as something like you can do it if you want to, like that's a life choice you can make, but you don't have to. You can be, child free, as the Redditors say, right? And the whole thing is that for again, like up until like not that long ago, it wasn't a choice to have a family. It was like something you did with your life if you were able to. And that's how humans are supposed to operate. And the essentially the whole society that we've set up where you can live your whole life and not have any children and not even like attempt to have any children, right? And that's not seen as a problem. Like that's like the root of why we have a fertility crisis, right?
Okay,
Because
but
like
what do you do about that besides remove choice? For the only option you could possibly have is just have a disgusting system of forced breeders turning women into forced breeders because, yep, the world we live in, it's you can travel, you can vlog, you can doom scroll on TikTok for a long time. There's a never-ending entertainment industry in this country. You can be so incredibly distracted and live an incredibly happy and fulfilled life without any children. And that's the world we live in. So either we live like the Amish or we just force people to breed. I don't see any other alternative here. But I'm asking you.
Like when people have done like studies on this and stuff, the Amish are like significantly more satisfied with their lives than average Americans are. You realize that, right? Like on average, Amish people are doing pretty well.
Yeah, I don't look down on them because they don't use power tools. I think they are allowed to use power tools.
Some of them, it depends on the sex.
I don't look down on them, but when I say live like the Amish, what I actually mean is live the way we did hundreds of years ago. And if you care about, like, there's this life satisfaction thing that you can point to with them, and they like they beat the average person in that. Perhaps I would be okay with admitting that. But if you care about living a long and healthy life, then living the way we did hundreds of years ago was not good for that. I don't know how you're going to sell people the idea of regressing like that in the interest of 2.2 births per couple or whatever.
Well, no, and this goes back to what I was saying, that you can there's good and bad things about modernity, and the idea that, you know, having incentives for women to have more kids or something like that, the idea that along with that, like, our maternal, like, mortality has to go up or something, like, that's just not true. Like, you can all of the terrible things about 200 years ago, as far as like we didn't have penicillin, you know, pregnancy was more risky, like all this stuff, like you can fix those problems without everything else that modernity has given us, right? So what I'm saying is that, like, you can have a society where women have more kids, and there's, you know, a space for women to essentially be homemakers for like full time, and that doesn't mean that we go back to like all of like everything else that we did 200 years ago. Like we can pick and choose, right?
Oh, pick and choose. Yeah, I thought you said pick shoes or something.
We can do that too, but yeah, we can pick and choose.
Yeah, that's the other problem with women. They have too many shoes.
You're not wrong about that, my friend.
I think I might have more shoes than my wife.
I was about to say, my roommate has like, I want to say like 30 pairs of shoes, and like I've only, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not like that though. I only have like 2 pairs of shoes.
Right. Well, that went on for almost an hour, so I think we'll probably end it there.